What's the biggest double life you've ever personally seen revealed? Our family cat was outside one night and I see my cat walking directly towards my neighbor's house and then I see their front door open. Walks directly inside like she'd done it a million times. She was outside quite a bit so we assumed she was outside doing cat stuff. Nope. Little kitty was just at home. Number 2. We had a guy in high school who faked a deep voice for the 7 years we've known him, and senior year he revealed that it wasn't his real voice. Edit. Typically kids in high school also went to middle school with the same people. I know a guy who faked cancer. But when he traveled to a town an hour or so away for his chemo he was really molesting children. He worked for a car rental company and got them to comp him rentals to go for his treatments. Oh, and he had a few of us almost convinced that his landlord was a child molester and the actual reason their home had that very phrase spray painted on it by parties unknown. So yeah. The diddler who faked cancer to enable his child molestation and CP production would have to be the craziest double life of anyone I've known. A well-respected family of 2 teachers with 2 cute kids, the husband at the high school and the wife at the elementary school in the fairly high-income town they lived in. Turns out the wife was dealing drugs without husband knowing. Got busted at school, cops showed up to elementary and high school. Lost her job and they got divorced. She moved away. Not really revealed because it was always in the open. But my parents' friend has the weirdest double life situation I've ever seen. Paul was married to Clarissa for 12 years. And they had a son together. However, Paul and Clarissa break up. And Paul moves out. Shortly after, Paul starts dating Jenny. Shortly after Jenny gets pregnant, Paul realizes he misses Clarissa. And somehow talks Jenny and Clarissa into sharing him. Then, a few years later, Paul adds Renee to the mix. I should throw in these are decent looking women with jobs. And Paul himself is no rich Adonis either. So, Paul has a wife and 2 girlfriends. They each have their own house on the same street. And their own individual family lives. Paul spends the night with a different one each night. And they trade holidays. The women aren't romantically involved and they barely interact. So it's not like a poly relationship or even a sister-wife deal. How he pulled this off and how they make it work is beyond me. But it's been years now. Edit. I didn't think this was poly because the women aren't with each other. But apparently it can be poly by just them being with him. So when I first left home in my late teens I shared a big house, I think 6+ bedrooms, with a close friend. His brother and some other randoms. Think frat house except no college university. Splitting the expenses worked out pretty well. So one of the guys worked at a port in customs or something. He had a uniform and ID etc. Left for work at the same time every morning and hung out with us after work. He was always down for attending social events with us and most of us liked him. Fast forward about a year and he starts telling us about how he can get us discounted TVs and other merchandise from the port. Unclaimed seized property that apparently no one sweats about if just a few items go astray. Everyone gave it a pass as it seemed sketchy. Then one day we come home to one of our housemates in shock and bawling like a baby. Turns out not only did he give the guy his life savings, he also gave him money borrowed from his dad. The customs guy had said he could get him a new car cheap. The long con. Turns out the guy doesn't work at the port. The name he gave us doesn't exist and we have no idea how he spent his days or came up with his share of the rent bills. Still creeps me out a little knowing I lived with a stranger for so long. My boyfriend's sister's friend was married to this guy and had started a family with him. They just had their second child actually, the first was probably 7-8 years old. Every year he went on a hunting trip to Missouri for about a week. Turns out he wasn't hunting. Turns out he had another family there. 2 kids. Almost exactly the same ages as the other 2. The friend divorced him immediately when she found it. Edit. Words. A work colleague was exposed as an illegal immigrant using a false identity. He absconded back to his home country of Iraq and on arrival was arrested and hanged for war crimes. We only found this out when his wife threatened to sue the company for exposing him. The Netherlands. Great-grandfather's family had an inkling that no amount of prosperity was worth risking what Hitler was spreading. He took his wife and 4 sons on a boat. Settled in Illinois-Wisconsin border to just find middle classism as skilled carpenters and other building tradesmen. The family didn't realize till nearly 1970 that the house they just left without selling in Holland. The Jewish family of husband, wife, and 4 boys who lived next door moved in without asking. Called themselves my family name, firsts and last. The local Protestant church had them every Sunday. They survived the Holocaust. Has any greater accidental zero-effort hero ever happened? A friend of mine lives in San Diego and was recently telling me the story of her grandfather who has an entire family in Mexico that he kept hidden for decades. I'm talking he has kids that have kids. And one of his secret granddaughters has another kid. Dude is a great grandfather and nobody knew. Her grandfather is nearly 90. So it's unbelievable how much a quiet old man can keep from people. There was this kid at our church who started attending the youth group when he was about 15. Everyone loved him. But he was always a little standoffish. Fast forward 3 years to graduation time. Everyone kept asking him what he planned to do after high school and if he was looking forward to it. But he always changed the subject. Finally, he revealed to one of the adults that he wasn't graduating because he hasn't been to school since he was 8 years old. His dad removed him from school and never let him return. A whole bunch of it went down after that. But the church members helped him do a fast-track HS degree in 3 years and have now paid for him to attend a 4-year university. In one of my previous jobs a few years ago, we hired this guy who turned out to be a really good partner. Worked hard. Never complained. After about 1.5 years of working with him, I get called into the office. He's there with the manager, assistant manager and 2 beefy guys in normal clothes with the exception of earpieces. He wanted to say goodbye to the bosses and explain why he had to leave the company. Turned out he was the son of some leader in his country and they had to relocate him. An opposing faction found out he was in our state and would have kidnapped him for leverage. We had a brother-in-law we all liked a lot. The guy had a huge personality. Was fun to be around. Held a great job. And had a beautiful wife and young daughter. One day the FBI came and arrested him for child porn. Nobody saw it coming. He ended up doing some serious prison time and basically lost everything. My best friend was a law secretary. Engaged, I was to be a bridesmaid, and planning a baby. She was also moonlighting as a sex worker. Having frequent unprotected group sex. When I prepared some literature about compulsive sexual behavior and found a therapist for her, she cut me out of her wedding and life. My family hosted a number of exchange students while we were growing up. We hosted about 7 high school students over the course of my childhood, each stayed for a year in our house. Attended high school in our town etc. One girl, Irenia, from Russia came to us no differently than any of the other students had. Through the AFS program. To be in student through AFS meant you had to fill out an application. Be 17-18 years old. Be attending high school in your home country. Whatever. So Irina arrives as our exchange student. She goes to high school in our small hometown on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. But at Christmas time she says she has to go home to Russia because her mother was extremely sick. Going home during the exchange year is really unusual. Really rare. So okay fine, she's going to Russia for the Christmas break. NBD. She'll be back in January. Except she never comes back. AFS can't find her. We don't know where she is. If she made it to Russia. If she's hurt. Nothing. And we're terrified because we're her host family during this year and we always took the students in like family. Anyway, she's gone. Maybe 3 months later my mom is driving through our tiny town, again. Middle of nowhere Cape Cod, and she see Irina. With what looks like her mom. And some other kids. Turns out Irina has graduated high school in Russia already. Was like 25 with children and had posed as an exchange student so she could case the place before bringing the rest of her family. A friend's mother is adopted. No big deal. She knows about it since she was 5 and loved her adoptive mom to bits. So it was never an issue. When she was in her late 20s, she discovered she had a brother which lived in a nearby city. For the Brazilians amongst us, we are all in Sao Paulo and her brother was living in Santos. So she decided to go after him. And it turns out her brother, who was in his early 30s, did not know he was adopted. He had a fit and even slapped his mom in the face. My friend's ex got arrested for kidnapping and hundreds of counts of child porn. I only know what I've read in the papers, but I guess he would go to chat rooms and prey on vulnerable 12-year-olds. He'd make them do drugs and self-mutilate while he took pictures. My friend has a son with him and met him when she was like 16. She's 26 now. He's in his late 40s. So gross. He's in prison for I believe 35 plus years. I don't know the story very well, but there was a 20-something-year-old guy in a nearby town that died, leaving a will that gave a bunch of money to his sister with a note that she couldn't have it until she got clean from drugs and went to college. At her graduation, the guy shows up and admits that he faked his death and was living overseas. Still gave her the money and helped her open a business with it. I'll save the backstory. A good friend's father was found out to be huge in the cocaine trade. Not like a dealer on the streets, but smuggling into the country and helping distribute in California. The dad was a real normal dude. And very family oriented present. He's in prison now. Blew my mind.